Let's talk a little bit about rounding. Why is rounding important to us? Well, rounding is important because it makes numbers a lot easier to work with. Whether you're trying to add them quickly, subtract them quickly, maybe multiply quickly, it just helps us do mental math a lot quicker. So it's definitely a good tool to have in your toolbox. One strategy you can use for rounding is using number lines. So let's say that we're rounding to the nearest tens place. That means that your answer is going to be a multiple of 10. So you have to decide when you're given a number, is my number between 0 and 10, 10 and 20, 20 and 30, 30 and 40, 40 and 50, 50 and 60, 60 and 70, 70 and 80, 80 or 90, or 90 to 100. So these are your answer choices always when it says round to the nearest tens place. These are all multiples of 10, including 0 and 100. So let's do our first one. Let's say we want to round the number 32. So if we are using our number line, we are going to look at our multiples of 10 and ask ourselves, which one does 32 land between? I think it lands between 30 and 40. And if you'll notice, 30 is in the tens place, 3 is in the tens place of 30 and 32. So your first number, that tens place is always going to be the same. So you have 30 on one side and 40 on one side, on the other side. So I'm going to find 32. So I'm going to count on my number line, 1, 2, 32 right here. And now this is where you have to do your bunny hop strategy that I know we've used throughout the year. So we have to say, how many bunny hops does it take to get to 30? We have 1, 2, okay? Then how many bunny hops is it going to take to go to 40? I say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we want to get to the nearest tens place as quickly as we can. So for this one, it's a lot quicker to jump down to 30 than all the way up to 40. So for 32, then to the nearest tens place, it's going to round to 30. Let's do another one. So let's say we want to round 17. We have to ask ourselves, which multiples of 10 is 17 in between? 17 would land between 10 and 20. So you are going to put 10 on this side, 20 on this side. See how there's a 1 in the tens place for that first number, and the first number is 10. You're going to find 17. So you're going to count 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Here is my plotted point. So let's see how many hops does it take to get to 10. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hops to get down to 10. And then it takes 1, 2, 3 hops to get up to 20. So in this case, 17 is actually closer to 20. So 17 is going to round to the number 20. So let's try one with a 5 in the ones place, because our 5 can get a little bit confusing. So if we have, let's say 45. 45 is going to land between 40 and 50. So I am going to put my 40 on this side and my 50 on this side. I'm going to count 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, plot my point. Okay, it's going to take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 jumps to get to 40, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 jumps to get to 50. So what are you supposed to do? If there is a 5 in the ones place, or whichever place you're rounding to, you always round up. Think your number always wants to be bigger. You always want more candy, or you always want more money, right? So you would rather have too many cupcakes at your birthday party than not enough cupcakes at your birthday party for everyone. So you are always going to round up when it comes to a 5. And we'll talk about that in a little bit with our rule that'll help us remember that. So what if you just have a single digit? So let's try another one. Let's say we have the number 4, just a plain old 4. 4 is going to be in between 0 and 10. Remember how we said 0 is still a multiple of 10. So my options are either 0 or 10. I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, plot my point. It takes 1, 2, 3, 4 hops to get down to 0, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hops to get up to 10. So our 4 is going to round to 0, to the nearest tens place. Now, to take us on to our hundreds, let's try to round a big number like 98. So don't let the big number scare you. Do your same exact process. You're going to find 90 to 100. Oops. You're going to say that's between 90 and 100. So you're going to put your 90 over here, your 100 over here. You're going to plot your point, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98 right here. You're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bunny hops to get down to 90, or 1, 2 to get up to 100. So 89 rounds to 100. Again, remember that 100 is indeed a multiple of 10 in this case. Okay, so let's try the same strategy, but instead of rounding to the nearest tens place, we're going to round to the nearest hundreds place. So, same thing as before, you have to ask yourself, what does my number land between? But now instead of the answers being multiples of 10, they're going to be multiples of 100. So that means your answer choices are going to be 0, 100, 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, 900, or 1,000. So kind of like before, notice that 1,000 and 0 don't have two zeros after them, obviously, but those are still good options when we're rounding to the nearest hundreds place. So the hundreds place is a little bit different than the tens place because you have an extra place to worry about. For example, if we are going to round 338 to the nearest hundreds place, we are worried about the hundreds place, so that is going to be that first 3. Our ones place is automatically going to turn into a 0. So when we look at our number line, we are going to say, okay, 338 is between 300 and 400. So we're going to put 300 over here and 400 over here, just like before. But instead of counting by ones, we are actually going to count by multiples of 10. So for example, I have 310, 320, 330, 340, 350, all the way up. And the reason for this is because your ones place is always going to turn into a 0. So that one, it really doesn't matter. We just need it as a placeholder. It's really our hundreds and our tens place that we are looking at. So really, we're trying to find 330 on the number line, which is right here. So it's almost as if that 8, we just cross them out, and really we're just looking at 330. So we found 330. So we'll do our bunny hops once again. So we go 1, 2, 3 down to 300, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 up to 400. Obviously, it's a lot quicker to get down to 300, so 338 rounds to 300. Let's do another one. So let's say we want to round 693. We have to say that is going to be between 600 and 700. Those are our two answer choices. So you can put 600 over here, 700 over here. And remember, you're counting by tens now. So you have 610, 620. So now your tens place is moving. 640, 650, 660, all the way up by tens. So this is really like looking at 690 because we don't really care about that, what that ones place has to say. So 690 is right here, and by now you can probably see that it's just going to take us one quick jump up to 700. So 693 is going to round to 700. So let's say we have one of those funny ones that has a 5 in it. Let's say we have 150. So 150 is going to be between 100 and 200 on the number line, right? So we have 100 over here, 200 over here. Again, you have to change now the tens place. So we have to count by our tens. So 150, 160, 170, 180, 190, and I'm going to show you in a minute an easier way to do this, but just to give you a visual of what this looks like. So I'm going to plot 150. I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down to 100, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to 200. Remember our rule. If it ends in 5, we always round up because you would rather have too many cupcakes than not enough cupcakes at your birthday party. So 150 is going to round to 200. Now, if we have a number like 36, it's going to be between 0 and 100. So you have 0 over here and 100 over here. And just like before, we're going to count by tens. We have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, all the way up to 100. Because again, when we're rounding to the nearest hundreds place, that ones place is really just like a 0. So really, we're just trying to round 30 to the nearest hundreds place. So we have 1, 2, 3 hops down to 0, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hops to 100. So 30 to the nearest hundreds place is going to round to 0, but 36 to the nearest tens place is going to round to something different, right? Okay, so let's try one more. Let's try one of those big numbers. Let's do 982. So really, we're rounding 980, right? Because our ones place, we don't really care about it. So 982 or 980 are going to be between 900 and 1,000. So you're going to put 900 over here, 1,000 over here. Remember, those are your two answer options. So same thing. Then you're going to start by counting by multiples of 10 all the way up. So we're going to plot 980, and you can see we are just 2 little hops away from 1,000 versus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hops all the way down to 900. So 982 is going to round to 1,000. Remember, that can be an answer choice on your test. So let's get to our rounding rules. So you can remember these rules from this fun little rhyme. 0 to 4 stays on the floor. 5 to 9 climbs the vine. What does that mean? So that means if you are rounding to the nearest tens place, that your tens place, whatever number is there, is either going to stay on the floor, it's going to stay exactly the same, or it's going to climb the vine. It's going to go up one. Those are your two options, kind of like your two ends of your number line. So the 0 to 4 or 5 to 9 part comes from our ones place when we're rounding to the nearest tens place. For example, if you have the number 24, your tens place is either going to stay on the floor, it's going to stay at 2, or it's going to climb the vine and go up to a 3. So what we have to do is we have to look at our place value next door. That's our ones place. Our ones place is a 4. 0 to 4 stays on the floor. So that means that the 2 is going to stay exactly the same, and the ones place is going to change to a 0. Another example, let's round 76. So I look at my tens place, it's a 7. That means it's either going to stay a 7 in the tens place, or it's going to round up, climb the vine up to 8. But let's check our ones place. Our ones place says it's a 6. 6 falls between 5 and 9. So that means that the 7 is going to turn into an 8, and then our ones place turns into a 0. Let's do one more. 35. So 3 is in my tens place, so that's either going to stay on the floor, it's going to round down and stay 3, or it's going to climb the vine, round up to be a 4. Let's look at our next door neighbor, our ones place. It's a 5. 5 to 9 climbs the vine. That means that my tens place is going to climb the vine and round up to a 4, and my 5 is going to turn into a 0, so it's going to be 40. So you can use the same exact rule with your hundreds place when you're rounding to the nearest hundreds place, but it's a little bit different because you have 3 numbers to worry about now instead of just 2. So let's say we're rounding the number 152. I am going to look at my hundreds place. There's a 1 in my hundreds place. I'm going to look at my next door neighbor that now instead of the ones place, it's now the tens place. So I say my 1 is either going to stay on the floor, it's going to stay a 1, or it's going to climb the vine and turn into a 2. I look at my tens place, it's a 5. We know that 5 to 9 climbs the vine, so that means my hundreds place is going to turn into a 2. And then the next 2 numbers are just going to turn into zeros. So this 2 really doesn't tell us anything. We can really just cross them out automatically and turn it into a 0. Let's try another one in the hundreds place. So if I am rounding 368, I look at my hundreds place. It's a 3. I know that's either going to stay a 3 or it's going to climb the vine up to a 4. I look at my neighbor. It's a 6. So 0 to 4 stays on the floor. 5 to 9 climbs to vine. So my 3 is going to turn into a 4. And my tens in ones place are going to turn into zeros. Let's say we had a number like 729. So same thing. I look at my hundreds place. It's a 7. That means it's either going to stay a 7 or climb the vine up and turn into an 8. My next door neighbor is who tells me, which is my tens place. And I know that my ones place is really just going to turn into a 0. So 0 to 4 stays on the floor, 5 to 9 climbs the vine. So I know that 2 is between 0 and 4, so that means that my 7 is going to stay the same, my tens place turns into a 0, and my ones place is already a 0. So that is how you can use sometimes they're going to ask you to round numbers to the nearest tens or hundreds or both sometimes when they don't have that many place values. So let's look at that. So we can round 32 to the nearest tens place and to the nearest hundreds place. So if it's asking you to look at the nearest tens place, you have to look. There's our 3. Look at our neighbor. It's a 2. So our 2 tells us that we need to stay on the floor, meaning the 3 needs to stay exactly the same. So our round to the nearest tens is going to be 30. So now we need to round it to the nearest hundreds place, but it doesn't have anything in the hundreds place, right? So we have to put either a pretend 0 or just know that there's an invisible 0 there. So I look at my hundreds place, which is our invisible 0. Our tens place now tells us whether we climb the vine or stay on the floor. We stay on the floor again, so it's just going to be 0. Remember, we can have a multiple of 0 as our answer. Let's look at 91. Round to the nearest tens place. Tens place has a 9. I look at my ones place, it stays 90, right? Tens place stays on the floor. But if I look at my invisible 0 over here and look at my neighbor, that means that I round up. So it would be 100. Now, let's look at 532. Rounded to the nearest tens, same thing. I look at my tens place, it's a 3. So I know that my 5 is just going to come along for the ride. My 5 isn't going anywhere. I look at my 2 to tell me whether I need to stay on the floor or climb the vine. In this instance, we stay on the floor, so our answer would be 530. But when I'm rounding it to the nearest hundreds place, that's when I look at my hundreds place. We have a 5. Then my neighbor tells me whether I stay on the floor or climb the vine. So it's a 3. I stay on the floor. My answer is going to be 500. So this next one, pay close attention because it's a little bit different. So I have 697 that I want to round to the nearest tens place. So I look at my tens place and I have a 9 in my tens place, right? As we've done before, I look at my neighbor. It tells me that I need to climb the vine. But if I was just rounding 97 up, I would round it to 100, right? So we actually have to add that 100 to the 6 in the hundreds place that's already there. So round to the nearest tens place, this is actually going to be 700. And we can do it in the hundreds place as well. So I am going to look at my hundreds place, and what is in my hundreds place? It is a 6. Sorry, deleted that. So I'm going to look at my tens place now, and I see that I need to climb the vine again. So round to the nearest hundreds and the nearest tens place, it is actually the same answer. So now if you want a little bit of extra practice, you can round all these numbers on the left side to the nearest tens place and the nearest hundreds place. I want you to pause this video if you're going to practice and come back and unpause it in just a minute once you've solved all of them to see if you got them correct.